Hey, what is up, ladies and gentlemen? I'm Blossom here, and I'm the member of the forms of the Powerpuff Girls, and welcome for some more of the Maxi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next entry in the forms of the Kirby Let's Play Marathon. You remember how last time that Sonic managed to recently finish up with Kirby's Dream Land 3 for the Super Nintendo, aka the final Kirby game to be released on the Super Nintendo. And today, for this point, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our brand new Let's Play for the Kirby Let's Plays Marathon. This is Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, released on the Nintendo 64. So, this game did first came out in the forms of 2000 in both Japan and North America release date, and also a year later, while in our country, in Europe, we're about to be later released in 2001. Still have no idea why this game was still released in 2001 in our country, but that's besides the point. But later on, until when it gets to 2008, this game originally re-released in the forms of 2008 Nintendo Wii's Virtual Console version back in the day, and I'm considering this game also re-releasing it on the forms of the Wii U Virtual Console during some point in 2015, most notably because of the celebration of the forms of the releasage of the forms of Kirby and the Rainbow Paintbrush on the Wii U. But I digress. Enough about this little jibby jabber, so let's go and get started. By the forms of, we're actually going to be selecting file 2 right there, because I'm currently using file 1 in my own time. So as you can see, I've got some of my progressioning in the forms of 77%. But even then though, that we can actually get into this kinds of stuff when we get to the later portions of the game. And I was really looking forward to actually doing it for this Let's Play, not just because of the actual premise of the next Kirby game Let's Play that we're going to be tackling through, but I've been waiting for this for so long, because I usually first play this back in June in 2009, when we first got ourselves our Wii's. Okay, we'll get to that a bit later. Do you want to know how to use the Kirby's Kirby abilities? Yep. So the adventure begins when we actually come across into a new type of character we actually introduced in the Kirby universe. I believe this particular fairy girl was actually known as Ribbon, if I would like to record that, because even then, basically, we'll explain about the plot in the game when we actually get into the main action, because first off, we'd like to point things out is that we actually ended up in the first world in this game by the forms of Pop Star, because we've already saw Pop Star plenty of times in the forms of the past Kirby games recently, and you know, let's get this thing started by the forms of the very first level in this entire game, and that's the forms of Pop Star Level 1. And we'll talk about the actual main gimmick of the forms of all the gameplay assets in the forms of Kirby 64 the Crystal Shards. If you ever played the actual Kirby game before, most notably Kirby's Dream Land all the way up to Kirby's Dream Land 3, you know exactly how this game plays out, except the fact that rather than just playing this game in the actual 2D, well, it's still in a 2D plane, but it's more accurately, we're actually going to be playing this game in 2.5D platformer, so it's basically like, you know, think of like we're actually on the 2D perspective, but in the 3D backdrops, which even then are kind of like the same thing how it does in the forms of, you know, Sonic Rush Trilogy, and especially noticeable with the forms of New Super Mario Bros. Series, and especially noticeable with Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, and you know the suggestions. As you can see right there, that once again we got ourselves our 6 health bars, which is about time, because even then, unlike the ones in Kirby's Dream Land 3, that normally you can only hold up to like 5 units of health, or technically 10, but it forms of the little bit of health left, but that's just how it is. As you can see right there, we actually introduced into this new mechanic of this game, but it forms of combination powers. every time you actually decide to able to actually, well, normally as you can tell right there, I've already instantly got myself my cutter ability from the start, and then I can able to actually get myself my another cutter, while simply able to actually combine its two powers all together. This means you get yourselves a combination power. Like for instance, I've got myself double cutter ability, which basically this allows you can able to actually get yourselves a much bigger boomerang, but even then though, it does a long amount of distance, which I think this is probably the most uniquest part about the forms of Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, because not only because of the actual premise of you can actually do two copy ability powers all in one go, but also because of how the fact that how unique of how this will actually turned out, especially noticeable how some of these little strategies you're going to be able to use this kinds of stuff, especially noticeable how the fact that, well, we'll get to that a bit later, more onto that. So anyways, we got ourselves a bomb ability, which just like last time, we can able to actually explode upon blocks, and especially noticeable with enemies, and yeah, that's how you can, as far as I can really say about this game, honestly. Sorry for the lack of dialogue for this point, folks, because, you know, there's not much else I can talk through. So anyways, let's get ourselves our combination power of these bombs here. Whoa, looks like we got ourselves trouble here, because as you can tell, dark matter makes a return in this game, but in forms of how the fact that what happens is though, is the fact that dark matter actually possessed Waddle Dee and transform into him into Waddle Doo. So that's pretty obvious with this particular transformation, but he's pathetically easy. So there we go, that concludes the very first level in the game. So anyways though, we actually come across into this particular gold minigame where basically it functions the same way as how it does in Kirby Dream Land 3, except, oh, you gotta be kidding me, I haven't got anything. Oh, that's a bit lame. Great start for the actual gold game like this. But anyways though, actually I might as well get into that actual gold minigame once we'll get into it later on, after we're able to deal with the second level in this game, and it appears to be takes place in the actual ultramarine setting, in the forms of the actual forest level, and man, this music is so beautiful to listen to, especially noticeable. It always reminds me like I was playing both Paper Mario for the Nintendo 64 and also Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, but in forms of, let's just say, in the forms of the second chapter in The Thousand Year Door, because it always reminds me of that specific music like this. But even then, no, except the fact that in The Thousand Year Door came out on the Nintendo GameCube, whilst in this game came out on the Nintendo 64, obviously. So, now, for those of you who might as well able to actually notice something like this, and yes, unfortunately, I haven't got my original cartridge version of this particular game, most notably because of how the fact that this game, alongside with almost like, well, it's nothing like how it does it in both Mario Party 3, and especially noticeable with the forms of, Paper Mario, that the price amount of, well, the price range with the forms of the actual, physical cartridge-only versions were pretty rare. But I'm more concerned about the European version was considerably rare as well. That's only because this game came out in 2001 in our country, in which sure came out on the exact same year as how it does it in Tom and Jerry The Magic Ring, which I'm sure enough it still will be. But I just really cannot stand that enough. But anyway, so yeah, what else to be said about the forms of Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards? As you expected, as I mentioned to you earlier, that you got yourselves your 6 health bars, which, you know, very much like how it does in Kirby Dream Land 2, especially noticeable in the first Kirby Dream Land, and especially noticeable with Kirby's Adventure as well. That, it makes me feel glad about that, because even then, though, that just makes it a little bit more, well, I don't know about you, but anyways, I really do love this particular combination power between the ice and electric, which basically what happens is that Kirby transforms into himself his little fridge, which is really, really cute. And even especially noticeable how the fact that how amazing how the some of these combination powers will actually represent from. And of course, if you couldn't see on the actual screen right there, that we still got some lives to deal with here. And just like the ones in Kirby Dream Land 3, we normally start things off with, as you can see, it only has says 2 1-ups. But again, much like how it does in Kirby Dream Land 3 and most of the other Kirby games as well, if your lives counters reach to 0, this means you only have 1 chance left. And yeah, that's all I can say about it. And speaking of which, as you can see, we got ourselves these little star collectibles once again, just like the ones in Kirby Dream Land 3. That I believe you have to collect 30 stars again, just like how it does it in Kirby Dream Land 3, because normally this game, as far as the actual storytelling wise, this game follows more accurately the third and the final storytelling, but it forms of the Kirby game to actually be featuring dark matter. Because I say that because, well, we'll explain more on that later. But anyways, let's go ahead and get ourselves the first extra life in our game. Most notably, we actually did collect ourselves 30 stars, and including another one as well. If you manage to get onto the right side of that particular point before you're entering the little hole there. And we got ourselves this particular giant variation of this little bouncy mini-boss fight. And yeah, he's pathetically easy because he just stands there and then hopefully, God forbid, able to actually hit him as possible. But there we go, that concludes that section right here. Ah, I've seemed to recognize this guy. He was originally known as Ado back in Kirby Dream Land 3, but it's now calls it Adeline this time around. So here we go with this particular fight, as far as you already know. It feels exactly like how it does in the forms of whenever you first time you fight Ado back in during the likes of in Kirby Dream Land 3, during the likes of in Cloudy Park. That, except the fact of the matter is that this particular section is incredibly easy, because no matter what though, you can simply just able to actually finish this particular part no matter what. And, since then we got ourselves the second time we're actually going to be doing a rematch against with the Ice Dragon? Okay. Sounds about right, but even then though, that I'm assuming he's a lot more easier this time around though, as opposed to how it does in Kirby Dream Land 2, and especially Kirby Dream Land 3. But even then though, that's because it's the beginning portion of the game, as you expected or to. Unless if you're actually trying to keep a hold of your combination power, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to able to keep a hold of that for very long. And is that dark matter? From both Kirby Dream Land 2 and 3? Okay, sounds about right, but even then though, that he's pathetically easy, unlike the ones in, both in Kirby Dream Land 2 and 3, but even then though, that's only because, again, it's just the very beginning of the game. So, yeah, that's as far as you expected it to, because even then, it does have a lot of references, but in forms of the past Kirby's adventures, but in forms of, Kirby's Dream Land 1 and, well, not Dream Land 1, but specifically Kirby's Dream Land 2, and especially Dream Land 3. And just like in the likes of Kirby's Dream Land 3, you finish off with the forms of just doing a little bit of a kick sweep ability before you don't take any damage. So anyways, as I was trying to say by the forms of this particular goal minigame is the fact that all you have to do is basically we have to, well, you do have two different parts to it, like the forms of the way that Kirby was about to be looking around from, and after you press the A button or the jump button, then you can able to actually can tell how much in judge of your distance of your jumps you want to make it through, just like the works in the Kirby Dream Land 3 works, except it's in the 3D perspective this time around, instead of like the 2D perspective, but even then though, I found this particular goal minigames to be a lot more difficult than the likes of Kirby Dream Land 3 ones in my opinion, just because I can never tell. I was trying to able to get some of these one of those items in the forms of this particular goal minigame itself, but even then though, we'll get to the items when we actually get into the actual goal minigame and so on the future points and onwards. Well, not right now though, because at the moment right now we actually got ourselves the third level in the forms of Pop Star level, and it appears to be we're actually going to be exploring this particular gigantic castle, or to be more accurately, King Dedede's castle, because even then, I found was really odd is the fact that normally in the previous Kirby games, most notably since Kirby's Dream Land 1, and especially noticeable in Kirby's Dream Land 2 and 3, and even especially noticeable by the forms of Kirby's Adventure. Well, technically in Kirby's Adventure, they're normally trying to explore through, you fight King Dedede in the forms of the Thousand of Dreams, but, and also the same applies to how it does in Spring Breeze in the forms of the compilation game Kirby Superstar. But normally that's besides the point. But normally in the Kirby's Dream Land trilogy, that the King Dedede's castle was actually at the very end of the game. But it's odd to actually have King Dedede's castle at the very beginning of the game, which it will do the exact same way as how it does it when we actually get into Kirby Mouse Attack or Kirby Squeeze Squad for the Nintendo DS eventually, until at some point in September. Well, not August, mind you, because we got ourselves our upcoming marathon we're going to be doing for our Let's Plays department, because you can definitely tell why I'm doing the likes of the About section. So anyways, man, I really love the sense of perspectives right there, especially noticeable how really cool the dynamic camera view is actually pointing things out. But again, it usually takes place in the forms of 2.5D platformer, as you expect it to. And actually, before I get into this kinds of stuff, as you can tell, I've got myself the forms of double cutter copy ability right from the start, though, when I keep a hold of that for a long time. That's only because we need to use those combinations until we're able to actually get ourselves off one of those crystal shards. Because yes, basically, crystal shards are basically pretty much the same way as how it does in the forms of, well, let's just say the rainbow drops in Kirby's Dream Land 2 and these heart stars in Kirby's Dream Land 3. Except the fact of the matter is that normally in Kirby's Dream Land 2, you only have to find one rainbow drop in that specific world, which usually placed in just one level. And in Kirby's Dream Land 3, you need to collect like 6 heart stars in each world, which actually represents only holds up to 1 heart star in each of these respective levels. Well, usually contains only 1 world, and you have to like clear out the dark matter's power by simply we need to collect all 6 of these heart stars before you're able to accomplish the actual world. And for this particular game, it only has like 3 crystals in each level. Well, 1 for the actual boss level coming up, but even then though, it only holds up to like sometimes in this first level right there, or this first world rather, it only contains like 10 crystals to collect. Like normally you get yourselves 3 crystals for the main levels, including the first boss fight, which actually holds up just 1 crystal. And speaking of which, let's go climb up these chains and we go all the way up to the top. Well, this is actually a 3rd time that King Dedede got possessed by the forms of dark matter, pretty much. So, because yes, just like the ones in Kirby's Dream Land 2, and especially noticeable in Kirby's Dream Land 3, that once again we need to deal some of the damage in the forms of King Dedede being possessed by dark matter. Except the fact of the matter is, since this is the first world in this game, he's pathetically easy, because even though especially noticeable if you're using the combination powers, it just makes that incredibly easy to deal with this time. And now King Dedede doesn't have his own choice, because now he decides to temporarily team up with Kirby to able to save the world, which is kind of a cool change of way to able to actually do that? Well, technically in the forms of in Kirby's Adventure, whenever King DDD managed to help us for once to able to actually defeat the Nightmare, but that's besides the point. So anyways folks, here's the first boss in this game, but in forms of Wispy Woods again. Except this time around though is in fully in 3D. That basically there we can now actually see Wispy Woods in a 3-dimensional space. So yeah, it's pretty cool and interesting. So in this particular boss fight, as far as this boss fight goes, very much like how it does it in Kirby Dream Land 3, some of these bosses do have different phases. Like in phase number 1, it's the fact that you can able to actually deal out with this particular slave, Wispy Woods slave enemies, which I don't know what these enemies are, but even then though, I'll explain more to those little enemies when we actually get into the actual extra stuff of how this game offers to be, which even then, there's going to be a lot of extras in this game as far as at this point and onwards, just like the ones in the previous games. But anyways, the second phase, as you can see right there, he now spawns in for those little sharpie pointing things, which you can actually able to actually attack those by the forms of actual weak spots. It doesn't matter what weak spots you might actually aim for. So it's entirely up to you, because even then though that in order to actually deal some of the damage of these weak spots is that you can either use the combination powers as I mentioned earlier, or if especially noticeable, you can actually swallow up these apples and you can actually spew them out. So even then though, that's about it for Wispy Woods. Sorry old buddy, but once again you lost. So yeah, we're gonna have to end things off here for this point, folks, so join me next time, but let's play Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. Is the fact that we're going to be moving on to World number 2, Rockstar. So, see you guys next time. Later, fellas.